A review of the redevelopment of Ontario Place has found the process was unfair and cost estimates have ballooned to more than $2 billion. Good afternoon. The details are laid out in a new report by the Auditor General in Ontario.
It's been released at Queen's Park. CTV's Queen's Park Bureau Chief Siba Morris has the details.
The Auditor General has some harsh words for the government when it comes to the Ontario Place redevelopment. New Auditor General Shelley Spence writes that the decisions were not fair, accountable, or transparent to all participants. Government officials broke their own guidelines, meeting with interested parties and exchanging phone calls, not just with Therme, but other applicants too. The cost of the redevelopment is exploding, now over $2.2 billion. The price tag for moving the Science Centre alone has ballooned to more than $700 million. There are new costs to link up the pods and an underground loading dock. Therme also offered to pay for parking, but the province decided to take that on itself, reasoning it could create squabbles between tenants. The Auditor General finds the province's opioid strategy is out of date, not helped by their promise to add heart hubs focused on treatment. A policy change, she says, came with no consultation or assessment of what it could mean. Spence finds the government hasn't been tracking things like how many people use supervised consumption sites. There's no leadership or goals attached to the opioid strategy. The Minister of Health knew that closing those sites could translate into higher deaths, more ER visits. But the auditor says despite these foreseeable impacts, there's been no plan to mitigate them, no rubric to measure success. This government is the biggest spending ever when it comes to government advertising. Those It's Happening Here ads you've seen during NHL games, they cost almost $19 million. And the auditor says they do more to boost the governing party than to talk about programs and services. At Queen's Park, Siba Morris, CTV News.
Still to come, the man overseeing the beleaguered and long-delayed Eglinton Crosstown Transit Line construction is leaving Metrolinx. We'll have reaction to Phil Verster's resignation this half hour.
To Gravenhurst, where the big dig-out continues after the area was hit with more than a meter of snow over the weekend. A state of emergency remains in effect. Downed hydro lines are affecting cleanup efforts, and it's estimated crews have removed more than 50 trees since the storm. City staff are asking people from outside the area not to come to check on their cottages, and local residents are still being encouraged to stay home. They're being urged to avoid walking or driving, which may hinder the removal of snow, downed trees, and power lines.
It's overwhelming, but we got to make the best of it and help our neighbors. And yesterday we were helping people get unstuck, and it's one of those things. What do you do?
I know there are people in rural areas that are out of power and have been for days, so it's been quite overwhelming for them. But you know what I've been hearing from our community, a lot of people are trying to get out there and help people out and, you know, get gas to people.
There's no way I wanted to sleep in the car overnight. I feel so lucky being so close to Gravenhurst. Imagine that traffic probably extended for 4 or 5 kilometers, and thinking about hiking back to Gravenhurst in 5 kilometers would have been really awkward, I think.
Now, more snow is expected, perhaps as early as tomorrow. In the meantime, Highway 11 in Aurelia opened last night at 10 o'clock. The OPP says it took longer than anticipated because of the amount of snow and ice accumulation and the work involved in clearing the lanes.
And the snowplows are lined up and ready to go in advance of the first snowfall expected in Toronto tomorrow. 2 to 4 centimeters could fall on Wednesday in the city. And we have more news in a moment, but first a look at the forecast. Lots of clouds this afternoon, also chilly. We're around the freezing mark. And once again, we expect to get some snow tomorrow. Jessica Smith is here with a look at the current conditions. We knew it was going to happen eventually.
I mean, you know, it's a time of year, Nathan. We're expecting snow. We're in December, after all. Last year, a much different story, really quite mild. We saw a few bouts of it. And this isn't going to be a significant snow event. We're not talking about anything that's going to be as catastrophic as it has been through portions of cottage country. But we are expecting our first round measurable snowfall into the day tomorrow. For now, though, holding on to a decent amount of sunshine. To be honest, it's actually a pretty nice day. But we're still looking at a number of snow squall watches and warnings now expanding areas just just south of Niagara could see up to 15 centimeters throughout the day tomorrow and into Thursday. The same a little further east. The GTA, the downtown core, really does escape the bulk of it, but it doesn't mean it's not going to impact us because it comes just in time for the commute to and from work for a lot of people. Temperature-wise right now, we're sitting at 0. Feels like minus shade. The wind chills are fairly manageable. We're looking at a fairly light northwesterly wind, but that really does change as we head throughout the day tomorrow. It becomes southwesterly and really, really windy. We're looking at those wind gusts upwards of 50 kilometers an hour. So in addition to the flurry activity and the periods of snow, we also have the wind. We'll break it all down kind of hour by hour as we head through the next couple of days. But for now, I'll send things back over to Michelle and Nathan.
Thank you, Jessica. And now to a proposed ban on e-bikes and e-scooters on the TTC. It's being considered due to concerns about batteries being a potential fire hazard.
But there are concerns it could hurt people with low incomes and people with disabilities who rely on e-scooters and bikes as affordable transportation. CTV's Mike Walker is covering the story and has more details. Mike.
Well, Nathan, Michelle, those concerns are highlighted in a report by the TTC's Chief People and Culture Officer, which is being considered by the board this afternoon. The report states that a total ban would limit income and access to essential services. Now, you may recall the e-bike fire on a subway at Shepherd Yonge Station back on New Year's Eve. That sparked safety and fire hazard concerns, which has the TTC considering a seasonal ban on lithium-ion battery mobility devices on TTC vehicles and at stations between November 15th and April 15th. This was first recommended to the board back in October. Now, the report states that e-bikes are readily available in an affordable form of commuting for low-income individuals and marginalized groups who would be disproportionately affected by a ban. It also notes the proposed ban could lead to loss of income and decreased autonomy for gig and delivery workers. I spoke with advocacy group TTC riders just a few minutes ago. They tell me they recognize the hazards with lithium-ion batteries, but are against a total e-bike ban.
Well, I'll say it's not just my concern that the TTC equity, the TTC has produced an equity analysis that says, we should be concerned about how gig workers and also businesses in Toronto would be impacted by such a ban. So last night on my commute home, it was about 8:30 p.m. My subway car was full of e-bike gig workers who are delivery drivers. They had no idea this ban was coming. They were all heading home to Scarborough, really far away after a long days of work. And, what will it mean to ban e-bikes? I think it will be harder to do their job.
Now, instead of a total ban, the board is being asked to consider alternative policies similar to what Metrolinx has in place, which requires e-bikes and allows e-bikes that follow certain safety standards. Reporting live, I'm Mike Walker. I'll send it back to you.
Thank you, Mike. At City Hall, the drama over ride-sharing licensing is back in the spotlight today.
A year after the controversy erupted, councillors will soon decide whether to cap the number of vehicle for hires on the roads. Our City Hall reporter, Natalie Johnson, is at City Hall with the latest on this. Natalie.
Hi, Michelle. This file was a huge blow to the mayor at this time last year when the administration tried to cap the number of rideshare licenses available for companies like Uber and Lyft. It was a move that was done suddenly and without consultation to the industry. And ultimately, council had to back down on this one in the face of a lawsuit by rideshare giant Uber. Fast forward about 12 months, and city staff have now spent much time consulting with stakeholders, taking a closer look at the data here. The result is that staff is now recommending establishing a cap on the number of rideshare drivers, just over 80,000 of them to be precise, which is the number in play right now. The policy goal here, according to staff, is to mitigate traffic congestion and emissions and to encourage transit use. Data suggesting that private transportation vehicles account for 14% of traffic within the downtown core, and that as many as 61% of rideshare users would choose transit as an alternative if those trips for ride-sharing were not available. On the flip side, though, critics are concerned that capping the number of licenses would mean that users would be waiting longer for a ride and would end up paying more. Here are some initial reaction from stakeholders here this morning.
If you want to address congestion in the city of Toronto, you should take a close look at this industry and not rip out bike lanes. I think, 1 in 7 cars are Uber cars in the city of Toronto, clogging up street, contributing to emissions and congestion, and this is something that we need to tackle.
I don't think a cap is necessary. This is the only jurisdiction in the entire country that is contemplating a cap right now. I think Torontonians are looking for more affordable ways to get around the city. They're caught up in congestion and traffic. They want that convenience factor, and the city moving in on this really in the pursuit of an ideological agenda that has been so cooked throughout this mayor's office. I don't think that's helpful in the long run.
I can't speculate what will happen to prices. We are aware, and we certainly heard during consultations, that people were concerned about a cap impacting fares going up and wait times increasing. We did hear that, and that's why we built in a monitoring program so we can look at fares and we can look at wait times over the next 6 months to a year.
And we are expecting a response from Uber later this afternoon. Again, that was the rideshare giant that was willing to fight this in court at this time last year. They're currently taking a closer look at this proposal that would still have to be approved by City Council. That will come before councillors later this month. We'll bring you the full story tonight at 5 and 6 o'clock. Reporting live at City Hall, I'm Natalie Johnson. Nathan, inside to you.
Thank you, Natalie. Toronto's Auditor General says the city spent nearly $11 million on software that was never used. The AG report says the city spent $235 million on 7 major software applications from 2019 to 2023. The auditor found that of the almost $11 million spent on unused software, primarily from 2020 to 2024, just over $1.3 million was spent on software licensing for staff who were either inactive or no longer work for the city. The report will go before the audit committee next week.
Now to the resignation of the man overseeing major transit projects in Toronto. Metrolinx CEO Phil Verster is given his 2 weeks' notice.
He's leaving with construction of the Eglinton Crosstown 5 years overdue and the Ontario line construction well underway. CTV's Beth McDonnell has the details.
Testing continues on the Eglinton Crosstown. 13 years in the making and at least $1 billion over budget, it appears Torontonians are split on whether new leadership will make a difference getting the line finally open.
I mean, we understood that it will be up and running since September last year, but then we don't see any sign that it's running. So I think there's a strong leadership should be in place.
I don't believe that just a change in broom will sweep up old dust. I do think it takes more than one person, and I do think it's a communal effort, whether that be just through community consultation, but a lot more than one person to get things done.
After more than 7 years at the helm of Metrolinx, Phil Verster is seeing himself out. The beleaguered president and CEO resigning to take a job elsewhere.
It's unfortunate. I was one of his biggest supporters. What he has done in the last 5.5 years is nothing less than a miracle, building 4 lines, $70 billion in transit. We're going to miss him.
The opposition points out all the builds Verster has overseen have been mired in delays and cost overruns.
Today is a victory for transparency.
Over the years, there's been a lot of frustration with Verster not committing to an opening date for the crosstown.
I'll give you a date 3 months in advance.
A project riddled with mistakes, from how the track was laid to fights in court and now software glitches.
Why has this government let Metrolinx Phil Verster continue to drive this train overrun and over budget and over delay?
The premier was protective of Verster's $1 million pay too, saying he'd been offered much more to do similar work elsewhere.
In my opinion, he was underpaid, if anything.
Michael Lindsay will head up Metrolinx on an interim basis. Right now, he's in charge of Infrastructure Ontario.
Change does come from the top in these organizations when you have new leadership, hopefully a new spirit of collaboration.
Lindsay is tasked with getting the crosstown open as soon as it's safe as a top priority. But some have little confidence it will be soon.
So I'm not holding my breath. Looking forward to when it's completed, but until then, we'll just, carry on with our lives until we see a difference.
For now, Torontonians will have to keep waiting for that train. Beth McDonnell, CTV News.
A Kingston doctor has been ordered to repay over $600,000 to the Ontario government over improperly billing for vaccinations.
The doctor helped vaccinate thousands of residents at the height of the COVID-19 pandemic. Dr. Elaine Ma organized multiple drive-through vaccination clinics in Kingston starting in January of 2021. She was joined by medical students, medical assistants, and other physicians to administer the vaccines. However, the Ministry of Health says Dr. Ma misused the OHIP billing code because she hired unpaid Queen's University medical students as volunteers. In a ruling last week, the Health Services Appeal and Review Board found she was not eligible to bill OHIP almost $601,000. She says she doesn't have the money to pay it back, with the payments being used to run the clinics.
Further, that will mean that I have actually paid to vaccinate 36,400 people in our community out of pocket at my expense.
Dr. Ma says it's too early to say if she will appeal the ruling. She spent 2 years fighting OHIP's claims, insisting all OHIP billing rules were followed, and said it was standard practice to bill for work medical students are involved in. Kingston's medical officer of health expressed support for this doctor in her dispute, warning the outcome could impact planning for future pandemics. We're learning more about an apparent joke made by U.S. President-elect Donald Trump during his dinner with Prime Minister Justin Trudeau at Mar-a-Lago. Fox News is reporting, based on two sources who sat at the same table, that Trump suggested Canada become the 51st state if Trudeau did not like the tariffs threatened by the incoming president. Trump even suggested our Prime Minister could become governor of that newly minted state. Fox says Trudeau offered nervous laughter in response to the comment.
One thing that you should take note is that Prime Minister Trudeau was the first leader of the G7 to be hosted by President Trump. I think that is really significant. That is a testament to the strategic nature of our relationship. I always said we need to move from being just the friendly neighbor of the North to the strategic partner of the 21st century. And I think that meeting highlighted that when President-elect Trump invites Canada, Prime Minister Trudeau as the first leader to go to Mar-a-Lago, I think it sends a big signal to the world that Canada is a strategic partner.
Public Safety Minister Dominic LeBlanc says Trump was joking when he suggested Canada become the 51st U.S. state.
Foreign Affairs Minister Melanie Joly is attending the NATO Foreign Ministers meeting today, where she says the government is closely watching.
I've been in active conversations with many of my colleagues on this, and I will be meeting the Turkish foreign minister later today. So looking forward to having more insight on this issue.
Syrian rebels recently captured Syria's second largest city, Aleppo, reigniting a long simmering civil war. The Syrian government, backed by Russia, has rushed reinforcements to the country's northwest and launched airstrikes in an attempt to push the rebels back. More than 500 people have been killed in this latest round of fighting, according to the Syrian Observatory for Human Rights.
Now to Manitoba, where the search for two women murdered by a convicted serial killer is underway in Winnipeg.
The search centers on a landfill. CTV's Danton Unger has the details.
A grim task is now underway at the Prairie Green landfill. On Monday morning, search teams officially started sifting through approximately 20,000 cubic meters of waste in hopes of finding the remains of Morgan Harris and Mercedes Myron.
This morning, I was there with two family members as we watched that first blue truck of landfill material come down to the search facility. And it is an intense emotion.
This comes nearly 2 years to the day when those families found out Harris and Myron had been murdered by convicted serial killer Jeremy Skibitsky, and their remains dumped somewhere here in the landfill.
I don't foresee an additional search of the landfill.
But now, 2 years later, that search is underway.
To be back there 2 years later, knowing that the search was going to begin today, I think was very, very significant. And, you know, there's just a really powerful feeling.
Harris and Myron's remains are believed to have been left in the landfill around May 16, 2022. Nearly 19,000 tons of waste has had to be excavated from the landfill to get down to that target area. These small scraps of garbage are an encouraging sign that searchers are looking in the right place.
As we start to find items of interest, such as receipts or papers that have dates and addresses, we'll be continually looking at that information to see what it's telling us and whether or not we're in the right location of interest.
From here on out, 6 days a week, a group of 45 searchers and alternating teams will be here in this search facility, meticulously sifting through truckloads of waste using rakes in their own hands, all in an effort to finally bring Harris and Myron home.
As the Premier of Manitoba, I have to keep reminding everyone we don't know if this thing is going to succeed, but I pray to God that it will.
Danton Unger, CTV News, Winnipeg.
New details are emerging about the two Canadians accused in a failed murder plot in California. 25-year-old Devin Vanderhoof is accused of showing up at a woman's house after he became obsessed with her after years of online gaming. Police say he was disguised as an Amazon delivery driver, but the plan went awry when the woman's boyfriend answered the door, and that's when there was a struggle. Investigators say the boyfriend was stabbed and the female target stabbed Vanderhoof.
Somebody to have flown from Canada down to this part of California to commit this type of heinous act is definitely unheard of.
It's pretty strange. I think the community was, let's just say, shocked. I don't think people really know what to really think about this. I think it shows you, if anything else, that you really have to be careful what you do online.
The accused is facing multiple charges, including stalking and attempted murder. Darius White, his alleged co-conspirator, was arrested while attempting to leave the U.S. The next day, both men have pleaded not guilty.
After the spending frenzy from Black Friday and Cyber Monday is over, today is a chance to give back with Giving Tuesday. People around the world are encouraged to take part in Giving Tuesday. It was created in 2012 as a way to remind people to tap into their generosity after a weekend of shopping. People are encouraged to donate, volunteer, and spread awareness for causes that need help, not just today, but year-round.
As we make our way throughout our Tuesday, we're looking at a fairly seasonal one. A light northwesterly wind adding a bit of freshness to the air, but it's not too breezy just yet. That changes, though, as we head through the overnight and into the day tomorrow. Sitting at a fairly seasonal point, too, but it will feel just a little cooler than that. And the sunset 4:41 p.m. Coming up, I'll have a full look at your long-range forecast, including tracking some snow on the way for the GTA and the downtown core. All those details coming up right after the break.
Well, beautiful sunshine this hour, looking at the skyline behind us, and enjoy it being dry because we're getting a little dose of snow.
I know, and of course the question is, how much do we need the shovels? It can be toboggan, or is this just a light dusting? Will it stay?
For
what
us
are we talking?
in the core, probably a light dusting. We're not talking anything catastrophic like our friends have seen in cottage country. We're holding on to like maybe 2 to 5 centimeters over 2 days. So this is through your Wednesday and through your Thursday. So you might need to like lightly shovel to get things out of the way, but you want to clear the snow so it doesn't freeze and become something more treacherous. Weather is brought to you by the Presser Law Firm. Injury lawyers you don't pay unless they win. Beautiful start to the day, though. We've seen a decent amount of sunshine out there. It's not warm sunshine, but it also helps to start the day a little nicer, right, when we have a little bit of sun out there. A fairly light northwesterly wind starting our day, but the snow is on the way as we head into the day tomorrow. Again, this is nothing like what they've seen towards, say, Gravenhurst or for our friends out throughout Muskoka, but it is going to be likely our first real noticeable snowfall. We've seen some light dustings over the past couple of days, but this is going to be the first one where you're kind of like, oh yeah, it is December. We're sitting at 1 right now, feels like 1, no wind chill for us here in the core, but the further north you go, the cooler it is as some cold air starts to plunge its way down into northern Ontario. For us today, we're sitting at a fairly seasonal point, 2, feeling like -3. And as we head throughout southern Ontario, for the most part, we're kind of hovering right where we should be. Into this evening, we're sitting at about -2. It'll feel like -8, but those wind chills are getting wicked in some areas across southern Ontario in that -10 to -12 range with that feels like temperature. So you have to start kind of planning accordingly when it comes to spending any time outdoors. We are watching for a system right now sitting in the prairies, making its way towards us, prompting some squall watches and warnings. We're not under anything in the GTA, but areas just south of us, say through Niagara, they're looking at it closer to 15 centimeters, near 20 out through areas in eastern Ontario. So keep that in mind. I know it's a busy time of year. A lot of folks are traveling. factor in that we are looking at wintry weather over the next couple of days. We are going to see that trough that brought those few light flurries throughout kind of southern Ontario yesterday push its way out. It's this system here. The bulk of it stays in northern Ontario. They are getting the heavier snow, but we are going to be a part of it, and we are watching for a few centimeters here in the GTA. This afternoon, we're holding fairly clear from any of the flurry activity, the real noticeable stuff. Still watching for some lake effect flurries along those eastern shorelines of Lake Huron and Georgian Bay. Tomorrow morning, the flurries kind of hold on through eastern Ontario. For us in the core throughout the GTA, this is more of kind of a mid-afternoon situation, and then it just continues into the early evening. We're not talking again about a significant amount of snow, maybe 2 to 4 centimeters, but that's a lot when we haven't had any yet. So if you don't have your winter tires on, you might want to make that appointment soon. A few flurries continue off of Lake Huron as we head throughout the day on Thursday. And then we get a bit of a break. But it is going to be cool as we head throughout your Wednesday, your Thursday, your Friday. So keep that in mind. In addition to the flurry activity, it's also going to be quite cool out there. We dip a little below seasonal. We head in towards Friday, at least a little sunshine, a bit of a break to round out the week before we watch for the chance of more flurries throughout your Saturday. Again, we're not looking at that same kind of snow that we saw through cottage country, but it is kind of our first dose of the white stuff. But then as we head into Monday next week, we flip the script. We go back to 5 degrees and we go from snow back to rain. Michelle, Nathan, I'll send it back to you.
Interesting. Thank you, Jess.
Thanks.
Well, winter is quickly approaching, and experts are expecting a rise in respiratory illness.
But this year, we're also seeing a surprising rise in walking pneumonia cases. CTV's Colton Weens has the details.
As temperatures drop, health officials expect to see a rise in respiratory illnesses. But this year, there's a surprising number of walking pneumonia cases amongst younger people.
We see peaks every 5 years or so. We didn't see a peak last year, but we know other jurisdictions did. This may just be part of the natural cyclical nature of how this virus, or how this bacteria circulates. However, we can't explain why it's affecting young kids this time more often. That's still a bit of a mystery to us.
Common symptoms of walking pneumonia include fever, headache, and a slowly worsening cough. Dr. Matthew Tannenbaum is the Associate Medical Officer of Health in the Guelph area. He says the virus is a milder form of pneumonia, and you may not know you have it.
It's not necessarily bad enough that they go to their family doctor or primary care provider or go to hospital. They're dealing with it because it's mild and they don't seek care, and they're walking around with it, which means that they can pass it on to others.
Dr. Tannenbaum says the bacteria Mycoplasma pneumonia is the common cause of walking pneumonia. Public Health doesn't record data for this type of infection, so it's hard to say how many cases there are at a time, but tests can show the presence of the bacteria. In the past 5 years, 2019 was the peak for positive tests in Ontario. 5.8% came back positive for the bacteria. But this year, 18% of tests have been positive.
Youth and teens between ages 10 and 20 seem to be about the biggest group, but also high for kids under 10. And that's unusual because that's not usually where we see pneumonia cases cropping up. Usually it's something that affects people in older age groups.
Dr. Tannenbaum says walking pneumonia can be treated with antibiotics. Region of Waterloo Public Health encourages residents stay up to date with vaccinations, consider wearing a well-fitted mask in indoor public settings, and seek medical care for severe, persistent, or worsening symptoms. Most importantly, health officials say if you're sick, you should stay home. Colton Weens, CTV News, Kitchener.
After the break, a strike by postal workers may be having an impact on online retail sales. A strike by Canada Post workers is dragging on into a third week with no talks scheduled.
It continued through Cyber Monday, and the strike may be causing some people to think twice about ordering online. CTV's Adrian Gobriel reports.
For retailers online, it's the most wonderful time of the year.
I shop online too much, probably.
Globally, Salesforce estimates that Cyber Monday purchases this week will climb to $51 billion, up from just over $48 billion last year, though the software company believes that in Canada, the total tally may actually decrease year over year.
If you were to take what they spent in 2023 and you added inflation to it, they're probably going to have tightened their belts somewhat.
Retail experts say multiple facts could contribute to softer Cyber Week sales across the country, including consumer concerns about the ongoing Canada Post strike.
In fact, I'm expecting a package, and I'm bummed that I won't get it in time.
Close to 95% of the population lives within areas that are well served by the couriers of the world like UPS and FedEx.
If you're in a remote area in Canada, this postal strike could have an impact on you getting your gifts sent to you.
Absolutely.
Some larger retailers have added disclaimers to their websites today as they try and set reasonable expectations for shipping this holiday season, with Canadian Tire writing that a smaller portion of orders destined for very remote P.O. boxes may not be deliverable at all. The labor stoppage is also hurting small businesses who've built their margins around Canada Post's competitive shipping costs.
And now they need to charge more to cover the cost for shipping that they could have otherwise absorbed with Canada Post.
We found one alternative, the holiday rush of shopping at the mall.
I do not purchase online that much. My children do, but I don't. I do not.
Check it old school.
I love the old school.
Adrian Gobriel, CTV News.
Gift cards are a popular present over the holidays, and many are used without any issues at all.
But they can be tampered with, leaving people stuck with a worthless piece of plastic. CTV's Pat Foran has this warning.
My aunt gave me this gift card as a present.
Catherine Achita of Mississauga was given a $250 Visa gift card, but she says when she went to use it to buy a jacket, it was almost empty.
I decided to take a look at the gift card amount, and it said that I had $1.50 left in it, but I had never used it before.
Stranger still, the gift card had transactions on it that were made far from where she lived.
It had said I had made transactions in Hamilton and in Etobicoke, but I hadn't been to either location.
Gift card fraud is a huge problem, and it generally gets worse around the holidays. It's known as the drain scam, and here's how it works. Criminals go to a store, copy the card number and bar activation code, then reseal the package. They may also place fake barcode stickers on the cards. When the card is activated, the money that's added goes to the scammer instead of the card that was purchased. Before you buy any gift card, you have to inspect it carefully.
Run your finger over the card. Does it look like a sticker has been put over the barcode? Does it look like the package was opened and then maybe glued back together?
To protect yourself from gift card fraud, examine gift cards before buying them. If it looks tampered with, don't buy it. Buy gift cards that are behind the counter or online and save your receipt in case there's a problem. In Achita's case, she was able to file a dispute with Visa, and they agreed to give her a replacement card. It's supposed to be in the mail, but with the postal strike, she's not sure when she'll get it. As for gift cards, she's concerned about being scammed again.
It really worries me that someone might spend their hard-earned money, or someone who really needs that $250 or whatever amount they might be getting, they might not get it at all because it will be gone before they even know it.
Pat Foran, CTV News.
Another warning about ticket scams with Taylor Swift about to perform in Vancouver. The Better Business Bureau says stick to reputable resale sites. If you're tempted to buy Facebook or Instagram posts offering tickets at face value or less, the Bureau says they're almost certainly fake. That includes those that appear to be listed by one of your own friends.
You assume that it is legitimate because you kind of know this person, whether personally or through a friend. And what's actually happening is that their platforms are being hacked and they're sharing these offers of tickets that aren't real, or again, could be reselling the same set of tickets over and over and over again.
The BBC says it's unlikely someone would offer a great deal on tickets that can fetch big bucks on the resale market. If you still want to go, your only hope is more Ticketmaster drops this week or opening up your wallet to a legit ticket reseller. We're following up on the storm that stranded scores of people near Gravenhurst over the weekend.
And we've got some advice today on how to be prepared for winter emergencies. Guy Lepage is a Canadian Red Cross volunteer, and he joins us now live. Guy, great to have you with us. No doubt many of the folks who ended up stranded on the highway did not foresee that they would be stuck. Certainly a scary situation. How do you prepare for that?
Thanks for having me, Michelle. I think my first advice is to let people know, check the weather forecast, whether it's your newscast or radio, anywhere they get their information. You've got to be prepared. And once you know what the storm is like that's coming down the pipe, then you can decide, A, am I going to venture out? Or B, how do I prepare? So you've decided you're going to go because it's the holidays, you got to go see friends and families, go shopping. you've got to pack some things in your car to be self-sustaining, something to drink, whether it's water or juice or something like that, non-perishable foods. You've got to have warm clothing. And I know that might sound obvious, but we're still getting used to winter, both driving and having the proper clothing. Plus, you all should have a scraper and a shovel, maybe even some kitty litter, because if you are stuck, you can help yourself to get unstuck. But really, it's about being prepared and planning ahead.
Oftentimes when there is a considerable weather event, there's that debate. Do we go or do we not? It is so hard to predict. Is it best to err on the side of caution?
I would agree, because as we saw with the huge storm in cottage country, no one anticipated it would be that bad, and people were stuck in their cars overnight. So if you do head out, especially in a remote area, make sure your gas tank is full and you have some of the supplies I just mentioned, and then be prepared for anything. And especially bring a flashlight, because you never know if your battery dies out, you need a source of light, and it's nighttime. So it truly is a question of thinking ahead and what would I need to survive in case I'm stuck in the snow for an extended period of time.
Let's talk about, now you're stuck in the snow, right? Several people were. And there's that debate also, do you venture out or not? What's the best practice there?
The best practice is to stay in your car, because if you're especially if you're in an area that you're not familiar with, you don't know, especially in rural, you're showing some pictures now of a rural area, you just don't know where you're going to go. And you could be stuck outside in the elements, even if you're dressed warmly. If you're out there for a long, long period of time, you could expose yourself to some pretty grave danger. So you're better to stay in your car. Obviously, crack the window if you're keeping the car running, or turn it off once you're warmed up. But if you've got your non-perishable food, I'm talking trail mix, I'm talking about energy bars, things like that, and water or some other kind of liquid, you'll be fine, by and large. But I did see an interview with a woman who said, they stayed overnight in the car, they waited for the storm to pass, but because they were prepared, they weren't worried.
That's good to hear. Yeah, it's a great reminder. Also, people were stranded at home as well, which, you'd think you're probably fine, but certainly some people were saying they were freezing. Is there any advice on that front?
Absolutely. You need to be prepared to be self-sufficient for 72 hours. What I mean by that, you have to have enough water, not just for bathing, but for bathing and consumption and to wash. And you've got to have some non-perishable foods. I'm talking about a can and a can opener. If you depend on an electric can opener and the power is out of your home and you can't access your food, that is a problem. But perhaps the most important thing about being at home is if anyone in your home needs medication of any kind and they do not have enough and they run out, that could lead to some very serious health problems. So always plan ahead and make sure you've got enough medication for the people in your home to last at least 3 days. So if ever you're in a situation, and we all remember the ice storm of 2013, I know it's long past, but that happened where people were running out of medication at home during that period of time.
You know what, Guy, working in news, we've seen it all. We've seen many folks get stranded on highways, and it really is good to have this top of mind as we head into the winter months. We really appreciate your time today. Guy Lepage is with the Canadian Red Cross, and he's a volunteer. Thanks so much.
My pleasure. Have a good day.
You too. And still to come on CTV News at noon, it's been a good year for Scotiabank with almost $8 billion in profits reported. That's coming up in business.
Get Toronto's top stories, breaking news alerts, and watch live. Download the CTV News app.
There is more criticism over billions of dollars being handed out to businesses during the pandemic when they were not eligible for the financial support.
The federal Auditor General says the COVID-era program was badly mismanaged. CTV's Mike Legature has the details.
Canada's Auditor General underlined a number of issues with the Canada Emergency Business Account, better known as Siba. The loan program handed out $49 billion and helped keep 900,000 small businesses afloat. However, it was managed by Crown Corporation Export Development Canada, which then farmed out the work on a single-source contract to global IT firm Accenture. And the AG says that led to a lack of oversight.
And when you have an accountability void, there's people who aren't keeping eyes on the dollars anymore. There is bad management decisions that go unchallenged, and ultimately no spending limit put on a big program.
Hogan also noted there were billions of dollars given to companies that weren't eligible, something the Conservatives blame on the Prime Minister.
His government gave out $3.5 billion of so-called Siba loans to companies that did not qualify, a total of 77,000 of them.
The Auditor General is concerned by EDC's statement that recouping money would be challenging and come with a significant cost.
EDC first needs to identify if these businesses are really ineligible and then decide whether or not recovery is going to happen. If the government doesn't want to recover, I expect that they're just going to be clear and transparent with Canadians.
Also, as of March of this year, $8.5 billion in loans were outstanding. Some of those are in the process of being paid back, but for the others, the government says there is a process.
The Canada Revenue Agency will jump in only at the end when the businesses are not capable of reimbursing or were not eligible. And we are using the same process as we use for any other tax debt.
Mike Lecouteur, CTV News, Ottawa.
In business news, Scotiabank profits for the year have hit almost $8 billion.
And the Canadian dollar is hovering at just over 70 cents compared to its U.S. counterpart.
Hello, I'm Paul Bagnall at BNM Bloomberg. Bank of Nova Scotia has reported a full-year profit of $7.9 billion, up 6% from a year earlier. Scotiabank also set aside just over $1 billion to cover loans that it believes might not be fully repaid. The other big five Canadian banks will all report results later this week. The fiscal 2024 year for the banks ended on October 31st. Shares of Bank of Nova Scotia were down about 3% this morning. Enbridge, the Calgary-based pipeline giant, says its EBITDA, which is a version of profit that excludes some accounting items, could rise by 9% to $20 billion next year. Enbridge also raised its quarterly dividend by 3%. Enbridge shares were up about 1% in early trading today and are up by more than 26% since early July. Finally, the Canadian dollar was trading at just over 71 cents U.S. in the late morning Eastern Time. The loonie has traded at less than 72 cents for almost a month now. The last time that happened was the pandemic period of early 2020. And that's the latest business news from BNM Bloomberg. I'm Paul Bagnall.
There will soon be a new leader at the helm of Toronto Fire. Deputy Chief Jim Jessup takes the top job in January.
Jessup is no stranger to the service after growing up in the fire hall.
That is my father on the balcony.
It was 35 years ago this month that a fatal fire ripped through a downtown rooming house 2 days before Christmas.
The picture shows exactly the conditions the firefighters were met.
Among the firefighters was Jim Jessup's dad.
The people that were my heroes growing up were not on Saturday morning cartoons. They were the firefighters on my father's truck.
And Jessup is not only following in his father's footsteps.
Thank you.
He's been named Toronto Fire Chief.
If you had asked me back on May 21st of 1996 when I started at this academy, would I be the chief of the Toronto Fire Service? Never would have dreamed it.
He'll take over the top job of the largest fire service in the country on January 2nd. What Jessup sees as the biggest chance to be a champion for frontline staff.
This job is hard. It really is. The scenes that our women and men are asked to attend, the phone calls our people take in our communication center. And I want to make sure that they have all the supports they have, that they like coming to work, that they feel respected and valued.
Jessup served as acting fire chief during the pandemic and led the charge in improving equity in recruitment and promotions. As deputy chief, he also led the service's response to major fires and emergencies in recent years.
The vertical city is going to continue to be our greatest challenge going forward. Everything is being densified and going vertical, and that affects everything from fighting fires, probably upwards of 100 stories in the sky, to the crane collapses we have had lately.
The new chief says he's humbled and proud of the people he will lead.
Every time that bell rings, picking that phone up, making sure that at 3 in the morning the fire trucks are rolling.
For Jessup, it's a dream job, decades in the making.
To me, family is everything, and this is my second family.
Still to come, chalk one up for the good guys after a Good Samaritan helps track down a thief stealing packages from a porch. We have breaking news from Gravenhurst, where the state of emergency will continue. The decision was announced a short time ago following the major snowstorm that hit the area on the weekend. Local residents are being urged to stay off the roads unless it's absolutely necessary, and people from outside the area are being asked to not make their way to town. Crews are restoring utility services, clearing abandoned vehicles, and plowing snow. A Good Samaritan in Montreal has saved a neighbor's holiday.
It happened after a thief pilfered packages on a porch.
There was a citizen who saw the packages coming off my porch and called 911 as he was following them from a distance and described them to the police.
Adam Ryder wasn't home but learned about the theft in real time from posts on social media. Then he got a call from police.
Some of your packages were stolen. Just wanted to let you know some good news that we found the people, we've arrested them, and we have your stuff. And I was like, what? I couldn't believe it.
Ryder was thrilled to get the gifts back. Cyber safety experts say people should protect their packages this holiday season, suggesting cameras and lock boxes. Good ideas.
That's a great neighbor. Sometimes it's good to have a nosy neighbor.
Right.
Weather-wise, okay, so it's cool and sunny today, and then we transition tomorrow to cool and snowy.
We are watching for that first kind of blast of wintry weather. Our friends in Cottage Country further north, they've already seen it. For us, we're not looking at anything that significant, but it is going to be that first kind of noticeable snowfall. So for a lot of folks, this is your heads up to give yourself extra time. Today, just seeing that snow along that eastern shoreline of Lake Huron and Georgian Bay, but for us, the timing of it all is tomorrow. Right now, still sitting at 1 here in the city, and we are holding on at a fairly seasonal point. Tomorrow, it's the snow and the wind. We're looking at periods of flurries off and on late morning into the early afternoon and evening before we get a bit of a break heading into Friday. But a heads up, Wednesday, Thursday, give yourself extra time for that commute. No, it is not a significant snow. We're looking at maybe 5 centimeters at most, but hey, it always impacts that commute.
Very true. Thank you, Jess. And that is CTV News at noon. Remember, you can get Toronto's breaking news all day long on CP24 and at ctvnewstoronto.ca.
For Jessica Smith and the whole team here, have a pleasant afternoon. I'm Michelle Dubé.
And I'm Nathan Downer. Be sure to join us later for CTV News at 5 and 6. Have a great afternoon.